the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at straighten. Whatever you've done with your photo and whatever you're going to do with it, if you end up like I did here with the sea pouring out of the right hand side of the screen because your dog has pulled the lead just as you were taking a photo, you're going to end up with a really pretty awful picture. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to just do a straighten. Now to do straighten, let me get this out of the way over here. Actually, I'll get rid of that. We go into adjustments, and you can see up here, there's a nice little thing called straighten. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring a grid up. So you can see that is what my horizontal ought to be like. But I can use my hand tool here and I can just pull that up until I've got it looking absolutely straight, nice and simple. And I've maintained the original size on it so it doesn't get smaller. But that hopefully will now just turn, that's the first step taken. So whatever else we're going to do, at least my horizontal is horizontal now. So there's one picture. Typically, you're going to want to worry about your horizontals. However, you can with, I'm not going to save this, but I'm going to go on to the next one. Here's one where I can actually adjust it because the verticals are slightly off. This is a church, or what was a nunnery in Santa Fe, as it so happens, with an interesting staircase. But you can see the verticals here are just slightly off to the right. So same sort of thing. We need to go in and just straighten it a little fraction here. So we're going to be watching the right hand side, pull that up, and also down here. Here's some good verticals for us to measure on. So let's just pull those around. And I think that's pretty much where we need to go. And there's another one. So there we are, one nicely straightened photo, ready for us to go off and do whatever else we want to do afterwards. But nice and simple, we save that, then you can go on and do more processing. Now let's have another look at another one. Here's a good example of what you can't do with straighten. Here I took the photograph, that's Gaudi, or one of Gaudi's buildings in Barcelona. Typical thing that happens whenever you're trying to take a high building, you end up with this awful perspective shot, and don't even think about trying to straighten with this, because if I try and straighten it, let's try and get a vertical here. Now I've got a bit of a vertical there, so that's nice and straight. What have I done? I've just bent that right over now. So the only way you're going to correct this is by using transformation, and I'll talk about that in a later session, because there's a number of things you need to do with transformation apart from just getting the parallels. You have to make sure that you don't actually increase the height too much. So there's some simple examples. Straighten, nice and straightforward. Do that first of all. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just have a quick look at white balancing. And in Photoscape, you have an automatic white balance tool here. With some products, you have a slider, but you're going to pick an area that you want. So let's just have a look. Let's just do the white balance here. And I'm going to pick an area up in the roof here. And you see what that's done? That's brought the white back into, you can do a compare here. So that's what it was before. Now what I've done is I've actually brought it into a nice whiter color. You can, if you go too far, as I'm almost doing there, that's whitened this up, but you're bringing a blue tinge in over there. And if I do it down here, that's exacerbated it. So it's a case of playing gently with it just to get the right amount of white. That way you'll you'll end up with another good starter for doing any other editing that you want to do. So white balance, nice and easy on that. I've got another picture here. This is a mill, as you can see, with the grinding stones. Very dark light, another one of my rubbish pictures that I got wrong. But I want to try and get some white onto here. You can see the internal lighting has given you a very yellow light on there and on there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into white balance. And I'm just going to pick that up. Was I going to do that? I think I'm lying, actually. Yes, I was just going to pick that up and pull. There we are. I've got that. There's a little bit of blue tint there, but you can see I've managed to bring the white up on those two columns. But it doesn't do very much in the middle here. We'll need to do, hello Norman, we'll need to do some work on that to get that light up as well. So anyway, nice and simple, bit more on the white balance there. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is levels. Now, levels is an interesting way of adjusting the lighting that you've got in your picture. Every pixel that you've got in your camera image is going to have a range of 0, in which case it'd be black, right up to 255, which would be bright white. And it'll be slightly dimmer all the way down. That's sort of a mid-range of it. And so you end up with a number of pixels that are bright white, which in this case you can see is fairly low, and a number of pixels that are black, that's fairly low, and the sort of grayish intermediate ones are going to be more of them. Now, this histogram actually is comprised of red and green and blue, but let's ignore that and just treat it as one color. So the more pixels I've got, the higher the curve. And in Photoscape, when we go into levels, you'll see that there are 3 sliders. If you've got a very dark image, you won't get anything up on the brightest numbers. And so what you want to do is to pull this slider here down to be able to make all the give all the pixels in the range, and it stretches. When you pull that slider down, it stretches the image so that instead of say between 0 and 200, once you pull the slider down, it calculates them again on a range up to 255, and suddenly you'll see that there is a lighter image. And if you move the middle one, what you're doing is you're moving the midpoint, and you'll make the majority of the picture lighter or darker. So and you've got a slider here which does the same thing with black. You pull that up, and that gets rid of anything that hasn't actually got any black on it. A bit of a boring picture, but I wanted you to see it in a large scale, because once I go into the pictures and we go into levels, you'll see we've got a little slider up here on the right hand side. You can see what's happened here. You've got an internal picture. This is a terracotta army, obviously, but there is the brightest pixels are only at around 150, 180. So if we pull that down, you see how that's brought the lightness up, because now the 255 level is now there. And on the dark side, I can pull that up just to the beginning of where that curve is. So now we're looking all right. That's nice and bright. But what I'm going to do is I'm now going to move the midtones a bit, just to darken it off a little bit. So it's nearer the greatest number of pixels. And that gives you a really nice definition there. If we go back and see what it looked like before, and look at it now, you can see how that seriously improved the picture very simply, just by pulling this down so that the whole range of 0 to 255 is between those two vertical dotted lines there. And I've adjusted the midpoint to be a bit nearer to the middle of the image that we've got. So hopefully that's worked out well for you. Now we'll do another one. Now here's one that's an early morning photo, and we'll do levels here. Now what I want to try and do is just bring the side here into a bit more perspective. So I'm going to do a mask here, and I'm just going to basically colour in all this area so as to get a bit more colour. Right. So you can see the mask there across here. Okay. Now this area that we've got that's red is the bit that will be affected. So if I now pull up the midpoint here, you see what I can do? I can just pull that up. I'll pull the white down very slightly, but what I'll do is by moving the midpoint up, I can bring the trees back into some sort of light. Just lifts it up nicely. Okay, similar sort of thing. And then we've got one more. If you remember, we did the white balance on that. I want to lighten the middle now. So again, we'll go into levels. We'll go into mask. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in this column. I'm just doing this very roughly because there we go. We'll just colour that in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert the mask so that what we'll do with the levels is work on everything other than the bit that we just looked at. So I go into invert mask. Now if I pull the levels down, can you see how that suddenly really brought the light up there? And suddenly I've rescued what was a really pretty awful picture, and I've got something worth looking at. So there we go. That's another one of levels. Now I'm going to show you something entirely different, just very quickly, and that is the Plough. I took that picture, and that's pretty much what you would see at night if with your eyes. But you see how that comes up on the histogram? There's almost no white at all. So what we'll do is we'll pull that right down. Suddenly it's all white, but now I'll take the midpoint and I'll move the black level right up. And suddenly all these other stars that were on your image have come up, and you're looking at anything up sort of 7 or 8 magnitude stars. So that's what you see with your eyes, and that's what's really there. And you'll notice here, this part of the plough on the handle is actually a double star. So it's worth looking at that at night. So the sort of things you can take with your pictures at night, with your camera. There's a picture of Neptune. Look at the colors that you're getting on the stars. Again, this is something that I've done, or one I prepared previously. So there we go. What I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to, having given you that, I think you had enough in there with levels. We've done the white balancing and we've done straighten. Next time we'll do some more things. So away we go, and I'm going to pass over to Peter now.
If I first of all go and get everything else off the screen, This is a Lensball photograph, which I've taken off a Lensball Facebook group. I think it was done in Canada. I think it was a pretty icy sunset, but that's a Lensball, probably a similar size to the one that I have, which a photographer has photographed and also got the background. Now the background's blurry, but basically what you see in the ball is clear. I haven't done any enhancement on this, but I know, looking around at the group here tonight, that some photographers may be unaware, but some are aware of the fun and creativity to be enjoyed taking photographs that include the view through a lens ball, also known as a glass ball, placed at a chosen distance between the camera and the subject. Technically, it's an external lens optic. Now, this introduction to you is primarily for those that don't know or haven't had a go at this. After this Zoom meeting, should you have any questions for me about Lensball photography, please email Bev and she will forward them to me. I'm not exactly an expert on this. I actually bought this ball Christmas 2019 and decided that I wouldn't take it to Australia, from where I never returned until August. And I have been trying to take photographs now in restrictions. So there's no exotic photography from me, but I have some examples I've taken over the last week or so, just to make a few points. Now, years ago, I obtained a fisheye lens for my 35mm SLR camera, which gave me the opportunities to take fun shots for my family, landscapes, and buildings. In digital times, I had ignored fisheye until one afternoon on Spice Island. I move on here. That's another example taken from Facebook, where somebody has used a mirror ball, and then you've got some reflections. But this was a photograph I took because some photographers on Spice Island, Portsmouth, were photographing Gum Wharf through this ball. And I said, oh, that's great. They said, do you want to have a go? So I used my smartphone and took this, quite a simple photograph. And of course, the image through the ball is, should we say, upside down. I got interested and went onto YouTube that evening and learned a little bit more about. It introduced me to what you can do. And then I went to Amazon to see if I could buy one. And of course, there were loads. And there's recommended ones. And the one I bought, it's cost me £15 plus delivery cost. It comes in a nice little box, which protects it when I take it out. And in the box was also a little stand, a little glass stand. So this case in Portsmouth, it was quite rugged, so it just stuck there. But if it had been very smooth, it might have rolled off. So I do have a little stand for it. Recently, I joined a number of Facebook groups and focused on Lensball photography, which provide users advice and a very comprehensive gallery of photographs taken from all around the world. At the moment, people are obviously photographing quite close to home, but it's people in China and Canada and all over the place. And this was me on Aldwych Beach the other afternoon, photographing the front of a decorated beach hut. The ball uses refraction, the distortion of light that is bent as it passes through an object of denser mass. The effective focal length is similar given by a fisheye lens. This was just to make the point that you can hold it. And this was again, Aldwych Beach the other evening. I haven't really touched it, so it's a bit rough, but the principle is I'm actually holding it, not putting it on the ground. This is sitting on its little stand on top of some seaweed on a groin on what I call the chalk beach between Elmer and Climping. Again, of course, the view is through the board, it's upside down. Now my ball is 80mm in diameter, and consider the most popular size, which weighs about 1.5 pounds. The size and weight enable me to carry it in a jacket pouch pocket or a bag when out and about. Here, again, taken from Facebook, somebody's used, I think it's a ski area, and they've put it on some metal balustrade, and it's reflecting, again, it seems to be sunsets. Being a ball, it's necessary to place it on a surface where it cannot roll about. If the surface is placed on cannot steady the ball, I use the glass stand. Now here is again Facebook, and someone's put it on a metal post. This is my little stand down by the rocks, the rock groin at Aldwick. Again, quite a grey afternoon, but I haven't played about with this. This is just the view through the ball, everything else, of course, out of focus. Some of the Facebook photographs illustrate a wide range of alternative holders, such as candlesticks, camera, tripods, bottles, and ornaments. Again, I actually used my camera tripod here when I put the ball in the garden and photographed some of our outside lights. This time I used a glass bottle and put the ball on top, and there was some fruit lying around. So again, you can have any stand you like. This was I think it was an old champagne flute, and this was a beer bottle, but it's the same principle. You can either leave it on the surface you're photographing, or you can raise it up. A typical shot down here, local at Pagham. I'm holding it in my hand, and that's a sunny day. How much of your hand you show can either be reduced in post-processing, or you have to practice holding the ball so that you can get less of your hand in, but you don't want to drop it. I did drop it the other day. So this again is back to Chalk Beach. And that's another photograph at the same time, but then flipped up. So that's on Facebook. It seems to be a mix. Some people flip and other people don't. I don't think it really matters at all. It's just a fun way of using your camera and making something of where you are, especially at this time. And that is, again, Aldwick Beach at sunset. And again, I put the ball on its glass stand on a post. So the photograph taken will always have the view through the ball inverted. There are choices in post-processing to flip the photograph or cut the ball part and reinsert it. If anything, it is during post-processing that the Lensball photographs can produce a very satisfying creation. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all managing to keep warm in this awful cold snap. Just a few little words about looking after your camera. Hang on, I need to move that. Right, yes. Camera maintenance. Making sure your camera's at its best operating at any time. The first thing you need to make sure of is that your optics are clean. And in order to do that, you're going to need a microfiber cloth, a brush, and probably some solvent of some sort. When you start cleaning optics, you've got to be very, very careful, especially if you've been out on the beach or somewhere like that. You may have some sand on the front of the lens or somewhere around, and it's always best to try and flick that off with the brush first, rather before you start rubbing it around with the cloth, because the cloth is likely to start causing some scratches. There are various places where these spots can collect. One of the main places is in the actual eyepiece, in the recess here. It's worth bearing in mind that anything you see through the viewfinder is unlikely to appear on any photograph you take, because of the route that the light takes. Another spot where you can collect dust is on the mirror and underneath the pentaprism on the focusing screen. Those are the main points where you, if you're looking through the viewfinder, that you will see bits of dust. And again, it's always best to start with the brush. And when you're going to start using the fiber cloth, spray the cleaner onto the cloth and not onto the optics. You can wipe around and clean it up initially, and then afterwards a second cloth, a dry cloth, is always best to give it a final clean. When you start getting spots on the photographs that you take, they're almost certainly on the sensor and not anywhere in this path that the light takes when you look through the eyepiece. Spots on the sensor are usually best left to the experts, although your camera does have probably got a little system when you first switch it on. It does a little vibration and shakes the worst of the dust off. If you are getting spots on your photographs, these, if they're not too bad, these are easily removed in post-processing. Most softwares have a little circular piece that you can put over the spot and click on it, and it clears it. If you're going to start attempting to clean the sensor yourself, you really need to know what you're doing, because you can cause some quite serious damage. Another routine that helps keep your camera in good nick is to regularly format the memory card. After downloading your photographs onto your computer or whatever storage device you're using, it's always best to go through the routine to format, because the memory card will collect little bits of information and slowly begin to fill up and reduce the number of photographs that it'll hold. I've done excuse the video. I'm not very good at doing videos, but this is a little one to show. There's the format. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that the television was. Can I mute that? That's better. I'll start that again. Hang on.
John, you've got 2.5 minutes.
Okay. Select. Should you? On your menu, you can search through the menu until you find the format card button. Press the button and you'll see it format. But there's a warning there that any photographs that are on the card will be lost. That's done. Okay. And the other thing to regularly do, if you can, is update the firmware. Your camera's manufacturer's website will have a place where it puts up regular updates. You've got a Mac version and a Windows version. You can check the update version here. You can look at your camera and again, go through the menu, bonk, search through, and you'll find somewhere on there where it says bonk, firmware version. Check that your version is up to date. To update this is quite a long process, which probably needs a separate session at some other time. So John, I'll call it a day there as we're running out of time.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but yes, thank you, John.